G'day YouTube, my name's Lance. Welcome to Bundy Bear's Shed. Well, in this video, we're going to reseal the front hub on my John Deere 1640. Now, the big hub seal, where I've got a photo here, has been leaking for some time, and just to get my work done, I've been just topping up the oil and keeping on going, just to keep the job going, keep the paddock tidied up and all that. But it's got to a stage where I think if I don't do something with it soon, I may forget to top it up one day and will cause some damage. So we're going to run through fitting the large hub seal. I also have a set of bearings for the hubs. Now, I bought this tractor in pieces second hand a few years ago now, and I did the 1640 series on putting this tractor together. So I don't know the history. The hour meter doesn't work, which we're going to get going. I think I have the parts here for that now. So we're going to do the hub seal, we're going to do the hub bearings, the big tapered roller bearings, we're going to fit them. The kingpin bearings don't seem too bad, and they're the bearings that the hub here pivots on. They don't seem too bad, but I have some here, and while I've got it apart, I'm going to do them. And on the knuckle, where there's a photo here, the knuckle seals are weeping just a little bit, so we're going to put new seals there. So this tractor's quite well, it's getting on now, 40 series, probably 30 years old if it's a day. I'm not sure of the exact age of the tractor. So it's worth doing that. I will see, I probably haven't got them now, but the rubbers on the steering knuckle here, we'll probably do those. I haven't got them, I don't believe, but I'll have to water them. The whole front axle, we'll have a look. We'll change the oil in the front diff. I believe the front diff's working well. But yeah, first thing, whoever tightened these wheels up, like I've never had them off, and they're out wide, and the wheels are actually wider than the front bucket, which is a nuisance. You need the wheels in behind the front cutting edge if you're going to do any tidy work. So we're going to pull the wheels in, and the back ones, and pull them in behind the cutting edge on the blade. I've started off by undoing the wheel, taking the wheels off. I thought, well, that's a pretty basic thing. I do have safety stands under the axle, so I've used the bucket to lower the tractor down onto some safety stands here, so it's good and secure. These wheel nuts were that tight, I used a bit of CRC penetrate on them and let them soak, then I had to get this big bar into them. I don't know who tied them up over the years, but man, were they tight. So the other thing I've done is I've turned the bung to the bottom, and I've drained the oil out of the hub, and you're going to have to get your metric spanners out. The axle's a ZF axle. They're a German company, and pretty well everything is metric in these axles, so you're going to have to find your metric spanners. The bung, to undo the drain bung here, or the Allen head key that you need for undoing the bung here, is 12 millimeters. So I've drained that, and I've let that drain overnight, mainly because there was rain on the roof and I couldn't film. So we're going to run through, I'll bring the camera in close, we're going to run through what we need to do. I'll put a photo of the tag here. Now, that tag is on the right-hand side of the axle as you sit on the seat, on the back side of the axle, in behind the steering knuckle, as you can see. Now, the top number there says APL 325. Now, in the ZF axles, they're very popular axles in the tractor market. The APL 325, like in the 1640, that does a lot of John Deere's, and it will probably be found in Case IH tractors and probably Ford New Holland tractors, and there may be others. The bigger axle for these is the APL 345, and the 345 was in the like 80 to 100 horsepower tractors, like a John Deere 3140, 3350, some of the bigger cases and Fords and things like that. So the parts are often interchangeable with those other brands because they were an OEM axle made by ZF, but each company possibly had a slightly different gear ratio that they wanted in the axle or something like that. But you'll find often all the hub parts here are interchangeable. Probably the crown wheel and pinion inside the main diff there is probably not. So this procedure we're going to run through, it's probably good for like your 40 series John Deeres, and this is the utility tractors, not the full American tractors. This is the utility tractors made in the Mannheim factory with probably have a Saran, a French engine, and but this will go for all of the ZF axles pretty well, even right up to the 6400s and the 6000 series. They're the same but different, if you know what I mean. They have different number of bolts on the kingpins and things like that, but the main basic repair is very similar, and you could probably take a few pointers from it. So I'll bring the camera in close where I can have a chat to you and pop it apart and show you what we need to do. And yeah, I need to fix mine. I'm going to do both sides, but I will only film one, of course. We'll run through this. I have all the parts from Sparex that I need sitting there. So yeah, hopefully, yeah, you learn something. I get my tractor fixed. I get to put a video out for my followers, and yeah, hopefully you learn something from it. As I mentioned earlier, I've drained the oil. Now, if you're only doing one side of the hub and you can't turn the hub to get the drain lined up, if you have two options, I suppose. One is to jack the other wheel up off the other side, so you can turn both sides, and it turns on the side gears inside the diff. So with both wheels off the ground like I have now, you can turn the hub, no worries, to drain the oil or do whatever you need. The other option, if you don't want to jack both sides up, is start the tractor, just jack this one up, start the tractor, put the tractor in two-wheel drive on the dash, but you must have the tractor running in two-wheel drive, and then you'll be able to turn it. So that way you should be able to get the axle turned to do whatever you need to do, and yeah, you can get it drained properly. Now, if you have a look here, there's another one on the other side. I've turned it round there to have a look. So you'll see a few shadows, but that's what happens in the workshop. Now, these screws here that hold the cap on the hub are 8 millimeters. So sometimes they're very tight. So at times, if you just give them a bit of a tap each, that jarring will free them up. Now, they don't need to be so tight. Once the wheel's on here and you have the wheel on and it clamped on, it can't move. So these bolts are really just to hold the hub on here while there's no wheel on there. So they don't have to be extraordinarily tight. So yeah, so look, that's okay. And there's a bottom one here, so I'll just undo the bottom one. And when you do them up again, just do them up firm, just take them up, and look, even finger tight like that would be fine, because once the wheel's on, there's an O-ring sealing there, once the wheel's on, they're not going to go anywhere, and you might save yourself a job for next time. So I have a pot. I have a pot over here. Now, I like to put all the bolts from one side in the one pot. So, and I mix them all up. It's just a small job, so there's no worries with that. So we've drained the oil. We've popped the Allen screws out. Now, when we turn this axle around again, I'll see if I can get it to where you can see it. There's a little mark there that you can just see, and that's to get a bar in, and you can get a bar top and bottom, and that will help you lever the axle apart, or lever the front hub here off. Look at that, it's that easy. So this hub can come off. Now, that's what it looks like inside. Now, what I would like to show you just at this very moment is there's a little thrust washer there, and in that dome in the middle there, it's got lock tabs on, and it needs to sit in there. It's not important now, but you need to know that it's there. So what that does, that supplies a hardened thrust so that the sun gear in the planetary here is not rubbing on the cast. So when you put the tractor together, it's important to grease that and make sure it's in place. These planetaries are good. You will be able to move them back and forth a little bit. That's just the type of bearing it is. There's no fault with that. There's no major metal in there or anything like that. So that will get a bath, and that will get a bath, and yeah, we'll just check the bearings, but I'm pretty sure they're okay. And yeah, we'll go from there. So we have this little shaft here. Now, this is the pinion, the sun gear in your planetary. So all the other gears revolve around the sun. So yeah, you have a ring gear, you have a sun gear, the planetary gears or the star gears, and then you have the ring gear. So that's just how they work with planetaries. So this little fella here, he's hooked directly to the knuckle that goes into the diff. So he's hooked directly to your differential, so he supplies the drive to your planetary here. So I'll go through two scenarios with this axle. Just to do the big seal here, there's no need to undo the kingpins and do all the rest like we're doing. But I'll sort of just show you part of the job as we go along, and yeah, you may see how it goes. Now, there's a circlip here, and this circlip stops the gear from going that way too much when you turn. So there's a thrust washer in here, a hardened steel thrust washer, and then there's a circlip here, and the circlip, so when you turn, and the universal joint there it's a double universal joint, and it gives you the steering pivot. This is to make sure that this doesn't slide out of the axle too far, and it stays where it's supposed to be to give you full drive. So I'll get a 15mm socket, and we'll undo this, and we'll run through that. These can be quite tight to get off, but anyway, we'll just show you. Okay, I've got some circlip pliers here. I'll turn them the other way around so they actually open externally. And we'll take this circlip off. So there's the circlip. Now, this thrust washer here, so that's the circlip and the thrust that holds the pinion there. See, it does go in deeper now. So that holds that out of the way. A piece of rag up here. Okay, we'll undo these fellas. Now these are quite tight. I'm not 100% sure of the torque on these at the moment. I haven't got a manual for my particular model, but look, memory tells me they were like 70 pounds, foot-pounds, but I'll see if I can find a figure. If not, we'll just wing it. Okay, we'll pop the little Makita DTW on it. Alright, we'll take these out of the way. That would be grade 12 flanged head screws. And this ring gear won't fall off because there's usually a dowel there somewhere. So now we've got that out. On the big tractors, on the larger ones, a couple of these have a thread in them. And I'll just check. I'll have a screwdriver here. I'll just check to see if there's a... No, there's no threads there on this one. So what we're able to do now, and then this is often very tight. This ring gear, it's on dowels. So look, it's on tight dowels. Some of the tractors I've seen a top marked on there, but there doesn't seem to be a top marked on this one. So, right, I've got my big bar in, and you can just get in behind the ring gear on mine. Your bar may be different, and you can see how we're levering from side to side. And that is pulling the gear up, off and over the dowels. They're quite firm, then once they start to come it does get a little bit better. Looks like we need a bit down the bottom. But we're just drawing it off those dowels. I'm on my squeaky stool. You can hear that little squeak. That's this stool that gets me down this low, but it's got a little squeak in it. I'll try one top and one bottom. Oh, we just seem to be missing it. So there we go. So that's the ring gear off. Now you can see we have dowels through here and a few dowels have come out with it. So what I will do here is oh look, it may not matter, but sometimes, yeah, I'd knock these dowels out and put them back in here. But look, it probably won't matter. At least that way we will know how it came off. We'll know that we were in that orientation there. So yeah, it's probably no big deal. So yeah, that's the ring gear, the John Deere. That's a ZF part number, 4472. Oh, I'm too old to read that. The rest of the number, 3512 something or other. But there's a little number up the top there. Okay, so what we have now, we have the hub, and the hub's held on with these two bearings. So you can see that they've had the hub machined up, that when you do this ring gear up tight, that pushes on the back of the bearing here, and that holds the whole show together. So what we have to do now is get this hub off. So this bearing has to come out, and the only way I know of doing that is, once again, get a bar in and bar left, right, left, right, left, right, and this bearing will slowly come off. And if you're just doing the hub seal, this is the job you need to do. You don't need to play with the rest, but I'm going to play with the rest just to show you. So I'll get our big long bar in here again, and so you can see that moved there a little bit. I'll try and get a bar over each side and try and bring it out reasonably even if I can. Now the shed's starting to creak. I need a better bar. bit of a fiddle sometimes. There's more of a fiddle with the camera in the road. Come around the other side, behind the camera. And there we go. So what fell out there into the oil is a tapered roller bearing. So JI 614349, and that gives us a look at the bearings now. Look, this bearing, even though I have new bearings, this bearing is pretty good. But what we have to try and do now is pull the hub off. So you can see the seal that's leaking is this fella here. Now that's quite a hard seal. It's very dirty here, so we might give it a big wash before we get too carried away. Okay, so if you were only doing the hub seal, that is as far as you need to go, and you would then knock this seal out, take this one out, clean the whole thing, put a new seal in, put the bearings in, and tighten all that back up, and away you go. But we're going further just to show you, and yeah, I may as well, while we're here, we'll do the whole job, and yeah, hopefully we can show you how it's all done. Okay, so if you are only doing the hub seal, as I said, there's no need to go any further. But if you need to replace the inner seal, so say the seal on the knuckle side of your axle is leaking, well, you don't need to do any of what we've just done. You can just start the job from where we're starting now, as in undo the steering knuckle, undo the kingpins, and pull the whole axle assembly out as a whole. If it's leaking on the axle side of the universal joint, start from here. If it's leaking from the hub side of the universal joint, well, you have to have done what we've done so far, and yeah, just follow along. So our first thing for the next part is undo this steering knuckle at the back here. Now, I've got mine undone. I had to bash it with a hammer. Yeah, I undid the nut. This didn't have a split pin in it, which I never knew, but I've undone that, and by undoing the steering knuckle, usually I undo the nut, put a bar up in there, and you smack the yoke on the end there. So, but for the moment, I'm just going to sit that back in the hole without the nut on, just to stop this moving around. Now, something that we can look at now is what end float do we have there? Is there any up and down movement? Look, very little. Actually, I can't even feel any. So that's a good sign. But what we need to do, I'll just find the socket over here. Is that 19 millimetres? Yep, 19 millimetres. And I always try and undo the bottom ones first, because if that bottom cap comes out, it will still stay there on the top. But if you pull the top out, gravity wants to pull it off in a silly angle. So we'll just pop the bolt out of there. Oh, that's a bit tight, that one. We'll try this back one. No, too tight for this little black duck. Okay. Holy. Oh, that's that one. Oh, boy, they were tight. Okay, I've changed seats. I got off my squeaky chair onto a milk crate just to stop the noise in the video. So we'll pop that one out. Pop that one out. Now, same on the top here. Oh, I think I either need the bigger nut gun. Now, oftentimes with these caps, the top bearing might be all right because of, you grease them here, and the bottom one often gets neglected, and it's the one that's in the rubbish all the time. So at this stage here, I like to pop all the top out here. And one bolt at the top here, I do like to keep in just as a safety. That pin's turning. These bottom ones, if there's going to be trouble with a pin, it's often on the bottom. So I'll just get a little screwdriver in. And, oh no, this is an easy one. They can be very difficult. And the bottom bearing sits on this pin, so there's often a little bit of load there, but this one's not too bad. So there's the king pin. You can see I've been greasing it. We have fresh grease there. There's an O-ring sits on here. Now the O-ring sitting against the housing, that's to keep the moisture out of the bearing. So that's the bottom one. You won't mix them up. Look at all the rubbish there. And I washed this tractor, you wouldn't know, would you? Okay, so now we take this steering knuckle out. He'll be out of the way. We pull this top bolt out. Now, one thing I forgot to mention is you can have shims top and bottom here to get it true. Keep an eye on the shims. There's no shims on the bottom here, but I can see a shim at the top. So I'll just try and support this a little bit. I have had these that tight. I've had to have a coal chisel under each side to really force the point. So there we go. And this top one has the shim. So keep the shim with the top one, and we'll try and put it back in as it was. So now this hub can come out. Now we can push this gear in and just pull the hub out on its own, and that's the mess inside with this seal here leaking as well. And they're original, you can see the green paint on that. So that needs a big clean up. But what I was saying before, if you only want to do this seal here, you could undo the steering knuckle, pull the pins and leave this housing here, or leave this in the housing and pull the whole final drive assembly off in one unit. But we've chose not to go that way. And this is the drive shaft that goes into the diff. So I probably should have drained the front diff, which I wasn't thinking about at the time. But what we look at here is these seal surfaces. They get a little ridge around them. Once you wash this up, You can polish that out with wet and dry, no worries at all. And these little gears, you can see there's a little circlip just in there. You can open that circlip out into the groove in the yoke here, and this centre piece will come out if you need to replace this. So if you have a crook uni or a crook yoke or something like that, you don't have to replace these gears or the shaft. This shaft comes out the same. Spread the yoke and you can pull the shaft out. So we'll just try and bring this fella out without making too much of a mess. I'll put the drain tin long ways so it can follow us out. And that there is the shaft that sits in the diff. So if you were just doing the job of this seal here, you would only need, as I was saying, only pull the kingpins and go from there. So these bearings, you have a little tin shield and the O-ring sits up on there, and you have a cup inside here with a tin plate underneath. These are actually in pretty good order. Now, if there's going to be a crook one, it's often the bottom one. As I said, the bottom one is always the one in the moisture, in all the rubbish down the bottom there. So that feels quite nice too. But anyway, we'll go and wash everything up, and we'll find some. I have the seals for here and the other side, so we'll replace all the seals as we go. I have the top bearings and bottom bearings, the kingpin bearings. If I need to replace them, I will. If not, I probably won't. But I'll show you the Sparex parts, the part numbers and all that.